the masochist wounding. If this is left unhealed, they can turn into, when you have had the psychopathic wounding and you heal that within yourself, then you become an amazing leader. Until you heal that within yourself, you can be a narcissist boss. You know of the 4 main nervous system responses: fight, fright, freeze, and fawn, but you probably don't realize that there's another 2 that are in there as well. The first one is welcome wisdom keepers, soul tribe, and new earth leaders to Soul Temple, your haven for self-discovery and growth. I'm Blythe Langford, and I am your guide to finding yourself and your true purpose. Together, let's shift from feeling stuck and misaligned to living a life of purpose and prosperity. Is trauma impacting your business growth? This is an interesting one because a lot of entrepreneurs are like, I don't need to deal with my past. That's really just ridiculous because I am so successful in my business. And if I concentrate on my past and take time out from my business, then how am I going to get any growth? Yes, I hear you, because I used to think the same. Why do I need to concentrate on all of the shadows and all of the dark things in order to have growth in my business? Let's just do like another marketing thing, or like let's just put some time into a new software or AI development so that we can grow our business. Yet there is an underlying trauma that we live each and every day from. So I'm going to talk to you about these because I want you to be able to see how they are either parts of you or people around you. Because the type of breathwork that I've done, we studied basic psychology. And so these 5 trauma responses, these 5 trauma wounds will literally help you understand where your greatest trauma was. And then once you can understand where your greatest trauma was from your past, your childhood, then you'll be able to see how much it affects everything that you do. You get your greatest imprints in life from conception to 7 years old. And that is 100% true and correct. So first of all, we get in the womb, we get imprinted with our DNA. What are you talking about? Our DNA is already part of us. No, it's not, sweetheart. Our DNA is an imprint that our mother creates for us over the 9-10 months that we are in the womb. So every experience that she has, every thought that she has, every food that she eats, every situation that's going on in the world, whether there be a war, whether there be a death in the family, whether there be house burning down, whether it be a friend that she loses, her dog that dies, all of these feelings create imprints in us of how we react and feel things. It's also known as our epigenetics. So our epigenetics and our DNA goes back 4 generations. So our mum, our grandma, great-grandma, great-great-great-grandma, right? So that is what creates our epigenetics. And I know a lot of people, especially close friends to me, are all like, epigenetics shows you everything and let's live to our epigenetics. I'm like, screw that. I don't want to live for the last 4 generations of my trauma. I want to go beyond that to back where people were all good and go back to my organic state and live from that place where like you can live 1,000 years old and freaking feel as happy as anything and be a magical being. That's why your conception is so interesting, because your mother's experience will create you and how you live every day of your life. And your birth then creates how you interact with the world. So, for example, my birth was so messy. Like, my mum thought she was having me. She got me to the hospital. My dad wouldn't let her go to the hospital because he was a farmer. He's like, you're not having the baby, because he birthed cows. So he thought that he knew better. My mother called the hospital, said, I'm having the baby. And my dad was like, you're not having the baby. We're not going to the hospital. We're going to have a cup of tea, go back to bed. And so the hospital's there stressing out, wondering why that they haven't showed up to the hospital. You know, my mum's doctor wasn't there, so it was 3 days in labour. That's it. You know, we need to do an emergency cesarean. The baby's not coming, da-da-da. And then my dad ended up having an argument with this dude, nearly got into a punch-up, got kicked out of the hospital room. It was just chaos and drama, right? And then I went into stress as a baby, and then they cut mum open, gave her all the drugs so she was passed out, and I was birthed into the world. Had no flesh with either one of my parents straight away. I was there with the doctors for who knows how long. And then my dad was able to hold me for a little while, but because it was 10 o'clock at night, then I went into a humidity crib and was by myself until my mum was okay the next day to see me. So I had no skin to skin. I had extreme trauma in that moment. And that was my first experience of the world, right? And this is so common for so many of us, and we don't actually realize that the root, like we always want to get to the root cause, and the reason we do all this personal development and all of these things is to get to the root cause of our issues so that we can be better in our businesses and our lives and our relationships. But we never actually go back this far. We always just concentrate on the mindset, the NLP and all of the things. Yet this is where our core traumas are birthed, and this is where our epigenetics are created, our DNA, and this is the place that we actually get to resolve these things as well. So that's how your birth trauma can continually show up in your life for, especially overachievers. We generally have a lot of chaos and drama and trauma in our pasts. That's why we're such great problem solvers, because we've had to deal with so much crap just to be alive and make it through our family and our life. Now let's go into these 5 core wounds. The first one is, I'm going to go through them and then I'll go in and explain them each one. So we've got first the schizoid wounding. Then these are terrible names because they were created a long time ago in the 40s, okay? Second, we've got the oral wounding. Then we've got the masochist. Then we've got the psychopath. And then we've got the rigid. So let's go into the schizoid. The schizoid wounding happens at birth. You know when a baby doesn't stop screaming, there's like a technique that happens called scream technique, where you let the baby scream and scream and scream, and then eventually it'll calm itself down and then it will start to sleep by itself. What's actually happening is the baby goes into a state of terror. It's so terrifying that it screams so much, and you've seen these babies that they scream so much then they just pass out. What's happening in that moment is the baby's spirit and soul leaves its body because it is so traumatized and feels so unsafe and so neglected in that moment that it has to tap out because there is no way it could survive in that moment. So it leaves its body, and that's known as a schizoid wounding. So this happens in the birth because it is so traumatic. They're cutting umbilical cords. They're slapping babies on the bum so that it screams. This is its first experience of life that's supposed to be beautiful and loving and nurturing on this world, and it's in this freaking hospital room that looks like a spaceship with aliens, like all in white gowns with faces, masks on. Like, it's crazy when you think about it. Bright lights, like so unnatural. And then they cut it from its source, which is its placenta, that's supposed to keep pulsating all of the vitamins, nutrients, and minerals so the baby never gets sick again. And you might recognize within yourself or recognize other people that have this schizoid wounding. It generally looks like somebody that is more lanky, quite lanky in their body, and very creative. Like, they love gaming. They love to not be in the world. They are an artist. They're very by themselves. They can be somebody that's completely disassociated from reality, that it's like just so hard to be here, and they're never actually, they always look like they've got fear in their eyes because they're just in this permanent state of shock and terror that's imprinted them so much as a child, as a baby, that you just see it in their eyes. They're often scared and they're generally running in their nervous system 24/7. Second of all, we've got the oral wounding. Now, the oral has 2 parts of it. It's the oral and then the compensated oral. Let me explain. So the oral wounding is literally what comes but next in the developmental stage. So oral wounding is generally somebody that wasn't breastfed, that didn't have that skin-to-skin connection with their mother, and it feels so needy. They're the people that take up so much time in their communication. Like, you give them, back in the day before we had mobiles, you'd be on the phone and you'd be like, they'd talk for 2 hours and then you'd get 1 second in before they get off the phone. You're like, how is this a relationship? It's all about them all the time. They outwardly express everything. They don't internally process a lot. They externally process and need to talk so much just so that they can understand life. They're always just needing the attention. And for somebody that's a compensated oral, you can be repelled by this person. A lot of people are repelled by this energy because it comes across as so needy. And we all have all of these wounds. So whilst you might be really repelled by this, we all have some of this within us as well. So that's the oral wounding. And their significant part on their body that you would notice is they have a little hole in their chest, like a little divot right in their rib cage. Like you'll actually be able to see there's a hole there. A lot of orals have that. So with an oral wounded boss, what it would look like is somebody that's always externally processing, always is in control, never really has the time or capacity to listen to their team, doesn't even consider what their team is going through or how the information they're sharing with their team lands, because it's all about them and their internal dialogue being expressed. It's all about their ideas, and there's no time for anybody else's ideas because they're the most amazing person in the world. The compensated oral is the flip side of the oral wounding. So rather than being externally needing, they're the opposite, where they aren't even aware that they're actually so independent but yet so needy of somebody's love, and so they will push everybody away hoping that somebody gives them the attention. I'm a compensated oral with a psychopath. Anyway, so we all have all of these wounds. And now this can show up by somebody, this is so common with business owners and high achievers. I'm going to do everything myself until you learn to delegate, that is. I'm going to do everything myself. I'm going to learn every single role. I can do it all. I don't need to delegate anything because I got it. I can do all of this and I will get everybody into the team and I will tell them all how it's all done. But at the end of the day, I am the independent one. I'm the one that's running everything. I know exactly how I'm going to do everything because I can do it all myself. And then we've got our third trauma response, which is the masochist wounding. Now, the masochist happens after the oral. So these are all in sequence, okay? So the masochist happens next. Now, the masochist had to be the happy child, had to be okay with everything. Everything's fine. Don't worry. Everything's okay. Now, we call them the smiling assassin, because externally they are so happy and so bubbly and will just, you can rely on them for everything. They're amazing and they're generally like this, But underneath they have so much repressed anger and suppressed anger that if this is left unhealed, they can turn into a terrorist, okay? Like it's legit that bad. Their unresolved anger and repressed anger is dangerous. So that's why these wounds are extremely important to deal with, and inner child work is very important to deal with. Now, how a masochist shows up in their business is pretty similar. Like, I can do everything, everything's okay, everything's fine. But then they have passive aggressive attacks at their staff, or they might have that a little bit of an anger thing come out and it's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't even mean that. I don't know why I said that. So a masochist body shape is somebody, because they literally have this repressed anger, is somebody that is bottom heavy. So what I mean by that is they're quite hippie. You might know a certain family, Kardashians, that are all quite bottom heavy, that would be a specific, very clear masochist. Like a masochist has got so much repressed anger, but on the other side of that, they are just the most loving out of everybody because they've experienced such suppression. And so their love is like unbounded. It's so beautiful. Next, we have number 4, the psychopath. Now, this is the most triggering word for everybody. Guess who's a psychopath? Moi. Psychopath are people that speak with those crazy eyes because they are like manipulating you with their eyes. They think that they're being really spiritual, but it's actually a psychopathic wounding. Ew. I didn't realize that for a very long time. And I just thought I was like, with all these other spiritual people, we're all just being spiritual. We actually have major psychopathic woundings. So what that means is that you had a parent that you were a COE for, a codependent. They were a narcissist and they had top-down authoritarian and everything that they said went, and you were having to suppress everything and just, it was generally a war zone of chaos that you grew up in. And that narcissist was always right. They were always right. So you might find that you've got a wounding of never being able to be wrong because you had to be right for your mum or your dad. For me, my mum was my narcissist. So I was her codependent and I would do anything for her. You are so loyal. You are so loyal and you have had the craziest leaders lead you. So that's what makes you a great leader. When you have had the psychopathic wounding and you heal that within yourself, then you become an amazing leader. But until you heal that within yourself, you can generally be a narcissist boss. So what that means is you can manipulate people to do things for you, and you can use your crazy eyes to be overbearing. Yes, we thought we were spiritual coming from our heart. Our wounding is saying another thing. Gosh, it's so tricky, isn't it? So the psychopathic wounding obviously says that if this wound is left unhealed and mixed with another wound, masochist, then you can create a psychopath, narcissist, also a sociopath. So this is a really important wound to do some inner child work on, because this will highly affect your business, because people don't like being manipulated, or you'll have such intense relationships with your team and your staff that are unhinged. They're actually unhinged, and that's when that person will end up leaving, and it will be like a catastrophe. And they might steal your database, or they might steal from you, or these crazy things will happen, but it's because you've also been that within the business. And then number 5 is the rigid wounding. Now, rigids it's the last developmental stage, right? So they have gotten through all of the other stages without any deep trauma. Now, how this shows up in people is literally through their body. They are symmetrically really balanced, because every one of these previous traumas causes a physical impact on the body. So they can be not as tall, they will not have symmetry in their body. Whereas the rigid, they're generally taller, they're generally symmetrical, they're generally really beautiful people. They're generally people that are celebrities and go into fame because they haven't had those previous woundings, so they're a lot more confident in themselves, and they're just naturally being praised a lot for being so beautiful. So they feel more confident in themselves. Rigids are also generally people that are very regimented, that set themselves up very well to succeed, that are very much in their heads, that are super organized, very much results driven, but don't enjoy the journey because it's all about the next win, the next win, the next win. So you can see a lot of bosses are like this. They're like, yep, this is where we're going, this is where we're going. And then it's like they're a psycho the whole way, or they're completely not present. Sometimes the rigids are generally mixed with a schizoid wounding. So they're very action orientated and very about the final place, but then they're out of their bodies and disassociated a lot of the time. They can generally be somebody that has obsessive compulsive, right? And a lot of addictive behaviors and things that are done like to schedule and very, very rigid. So that's the trauma side of it. But a healed rigid is an amazing mission and visionary and pioneering leader, right? Because they can not only have the detail, but have the greater mission and the vision and the pioneering skills to get there. And they also have the confidence within them that they are going to make it no matter what. I'm pretty sure that you can relate to at least one of them, and then the people around you, you can absolutely see how or who they are or where their wounds come from. And I'm hoping, and I'll touch on this, but I'm hoping that you can see how our childhood wounds and how our birth imprints literally are the root cause of how we show up each and every day. Like when I started to go into this, I actually realized that my wounds were running everything in my life, and I was pretty grossed out by it. If you can attune to what it is that you feel your biggest birth wound is, or biggest childhood wounding is, where you're potentially that body shape, and I'm not talking about your plastic body. If you've gotten plastic surgery, I'm talking about your previous body, where your body shape would be, where your psychopathic eyes are, where your rigidity is, and how, oh my gosh, I'm a bit obsessive compulsive, or where your big hips are and you're potentially pushing down and suppressing a lot, and your passive aggressive nature and your smiley assassinness, or your neediness, whether it be like externally needing or whether it's like, fuck, I wish that they would give me more attention, but I'm just going to do it all by myself. Or whether it's just schizoid, it's like, fire, I don't even want to be here. Like, I'm just never want to be here. Oh my gosh, it's so hard to be in the world, of the world. I don't feel like I belong at all. So see where it is that you potentially have a bit of work to work on, and where your responses to certain situations might show up. Do you generally fall into blaming or guilting or passive aggressive trauma responses, which is toxic feminine? Or do you generally fall into shaming and being angry, which is your more masculine wounding? So you can start to see this might have, whether it's the toxic feminine or the toxic masculine, it might have come more so from your mother or your father, and that will be your significant wound. For myself, it's my mother. So a lot of my internal rapport mechanisms and how I relate to the world comes through this feminine wounded place. Now, I want to also explain how these show up in the nervous system as well, because this will help to even take it that level deeper for you as well. Now, you know of the 4 main nervous system responses, which is fight, fright, freeze, and fawn. Now, they are the ones that are heavily promoted, but you probably don't realize that there's another 2 that are in there as well. Feasting and, excuse my French, fucking. Are you an obsessive eater? And so many people are like, oh my gosh, I'm an obsessive eater. I didn't realize that that's my nervous system response to how I deal with something. Yeah. I was a binge eater for a long time. And then some men and women are like, I'm a fucker. That's how I deal with everything. That's how I relate. That's how I like calm my nervous system down. So this is really important information for us to see how we respond to things, and then create a holistic plan for how we are going to work on ourselves to benefit our business. Now, if you notice that you're, especially a business owner, like I used to be in the retail industry, and fucking was a total nervous system response for a lot of straight men. Like they would be predator energy, leaking energy over younger women and manipulate them into doing things that are not okay, like older men with young women. So noticing these things about yourself, and especially like if you have pedophilic thoughts, like this is totally a thing. If you have pedophilic thoughts, that's something that's wired into your nervous system, and it's something that you can deal with. It's not something that needs to be stuck with you forever. There is, in countries such as the Philippines, they literally have a healing modality that they work with their pedophiles, and they've got a 89% success rate. Like there are healing tools and remedies that can actually help with every single one of these. But it also starts with, like I was saying, these 5 childhood wounds, which literally knowing which one you are and then being able to go and do healing within this. This is why I do rebirthing breathwork. This is why we heal these wounds within my program. So the one takeaway I would love you to gain from this episode is realizing that your nervous system controls your entire life, and it's probably been wired to something that you have been rejecting, suppressing, and putting away and shutting down and all of those things. And once you learn to regulate your nervous system, it will completely change your life. This one thing is the gold. Just this one thing will take you from your sympathetic nervous system back to your parasympathetic nervous system. Slow exhales. Slow exhales literally tells the body to go from your sympathetic back to your parasympathetic. Whenever you're triggered, whenever you're anything, it'll go from that wounded little version of yourself back into your conscious mind. So it literally changes your brain function. And that's why I just want to touch on this for my program, the Divinity Method. We go through cleaning up, growing up, waking up, and then showing up. They are the 4 pillars. You can see why this is so vitally important, right? And I hope that with you, even if you're not coming to my retreat then or doing my programs, that you start to concentrate on these areas, going in and internally cleaning up, growing up these younger parts of yourself, awakening to the true possibility of who you are, your mission, your purpose, your leadership, and then showing up in the world as the person that you know that you're here to be without any of your wounds. So the first step that you could do to acknowledge where you're at and start the healing process is acknowledge where you're at in the comments below. Let us know. Let us know where you think you are, what you think you're currently working through, because remember, we're all something at any one time. So it's okay to normalize what we are. It's actually perfect, because once we put it out there, we start to heal it. It will literally change your life forever. Thank you for joining me on Soul Temple. If this episode spoke to your soul, I would love your support with a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And do not forget to subscribe on your favorite platform. But don't let your journey end here. Connect with me and my like-minded community of souls at Blythe Langford on all social platforms. I really look forward to diving deeper with you on your journey.